The weeks of water forced a bunch of sandbags to blow out. One man who witnessed it said it sounded like a freight train was coming down the middle of his street. Instead, it was the River Des Peres aided by the Mississippi River and the weeks and weeks of rain north of here. Photographer Dan Eyrich and I are standing on Davis Street, and what's behind me is normally some residential areas of South St. Louis near the River Des Peres. And what you also see, that white building, is the Monsanto plant along the River Des Peres and Germania. It is surrounded by a huge levee. Neighborhood lore is that it cost $1 million to protect that plant. They had employees working overtime to make sure the place didn't get flooded. Right now, we'll be getting some aerial views to see how they succeeded in keeping the water out of that factory. They also have some pumps, we understand, running and dumping some water out of the inside of that levee, we understand is leaking at this point, but has not been topped. Also this morning, there is proof that this river has crested. What you can see is a soda cup along Davis Street that marks the spot at 2:30 this morning where that cup was placed. It was put there by neighbors who said, let's find out if this river is going to go down. And indeed, it did go down overnight because the water is receding away from that cup, leaving in its wake a real mess to be cleaned up. And already neighbors here are talking about cleaning up. One man told me, he said it's evident they're going to have fire trucks with fire hoses down the street to start hosing this out. So at least there is some hope among these residents who are flooded out in up to 10 feet of river water. Reporting live from South St. Louis, Mike Owens, News Channel 5.
For 4 weeks now, we've watched the Missouri, the Merrimack, and the mighty Mississippi rise toward flood stage and beyond. Now it is crest time. The question tonight, how bad is it? Good evening, I'm Karen Foss.
And I'm Rick Edlund, and this is a Flood Watch 93 special looking at the crest. Well, residents of South St. Louis now know the flood of 93 has dealt them a very bad hand.
The waters of the mighty Mississippi and the River Des Peres are just beginning to recede. News Channel 5's Mike Owens is in one flooded city neighborhood and reports that a mess is being left in the river's wake. Mike?
Karen, if it was just water, that'd be one thing, but it's more than just water. Here's part of the trash and the junk washing up on the shores of what's known as Herc Street in this community, fished out by a neighbor lady. There's also an empty dumpster floating around back there, a couple of doors down. It's floating in about 4 feet of water, so apparently the dumpster is empty. It's a mess. Neighbors say this is the view they want, their slice of flooded St. Louis from the air. Side streets covered with water. Signs of support to sandbaggers who worked all weekend long for naught. Floating debris. The residents stuck it out for as long as they could, forced out yesterday afternoon when a levee was breached. Now the water appears to be receding.
If we keep our fingers crossed, we feel fairly confident that we might be able to survive this crisis.
Katie Boxdorfer has been here for 26 years. The river is putting her on the run. Fortunately, you have neighbors.
Neighbors, that's right. Very, very good neighbors in this neighborhood. But after it goes down, they say the governor's going to buy this up, and I'm leaving.
Give up 26 years of memories? They're not all bad ones, huh?
Oh, no, they're good ones. Good ones. We used to have a lot of good old block parties there and backyard parties and everything.
But
now it's over.
Neighbors see the small damage to their homes. To you and me, it's big damage. They have some comfort in the fact that they are not alone.
Millions at least. I would think the economic impact is going to be tremendous. All of the industry below Broadway has been shut down for a number of days, plus the damage from flooding and the cost to the city and the federal government. It's going to be mammoth.
Just how mammoth, nobody knows for sure yet. I asked the Tanix and Gropey at that news conference today, how many homes are actually flooded in this River Des Peres flood on the city side of the river? They didn't have an estimate yet. They're not yet counting houses. I wonder if that's a fear that perhaps the flood is still coming and the crest is not fully here. However, neighbors tell me they're keeping eyes on those landmarks, those things that they've been watching since the river came in here yesterday afternoon. And they say it looks like to them that the river's down 3, maybe 4 inches. But as well, the river seems to go up. It almost has an ebb and a tide. We're not sure if that's really the case or not because, of course, this is a backwater of the Mississippi, and things change here on a different basis than they do on the big river. Reporting live from the Patch neighborhood in South St. Louis, Mike Owens, News Channel 5.
Mike, you mentioned, and we can see all the debris there behind you. The odor there must be very, very unpleasant.
Yes.
Can you elaborate at all, or would you rather not?
I can elaborate. There is a fast food restaurant near here, and some of their products apparently have ended up in the water. And one of those products they use, of course, would be grease to fry things like chicken and French fries. Some of their styrofoam containers filled with food are floating on one street over, and I think a lot of the grease in the restaurant is also floating on tops of the river, because that's what my nose is catching.
Oh, and the heat must make it just terrible.
Very pleasant, Karen.
Basically just a mess.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mike.
Well, residents along the Merrimack River are breathing the first sigh of relief for the first time in weeks.
Yeah, the river crested this afternoon in Arnold, Missouri, nearly 19 feet above flood stage. And there are parts along that river that have gone down more than 2 feet today. News Channel 5's Lisa Zigman joins us live from Arnold with details of the damage to that city and others along the Merrimack. Lisa?
Rick and Karen, now that the Merrimack River is slowly starting to recede, we have a pretty good preliminary grasp on how much damage has been done along the Merrimack River. Now, right now, I'm on the new banks of the Merrimack along Highway 6167 on the Merrimack River Bridge. This bridge remains closed to this hour. So does the other bridge into Arnold, Highway 231. That also remains closed, but there is some good news to tell you about. The river is slowly starting to go down. Where I'm standing right now on 6167, the river has gone down about 2 inches since 8:30 this morning. And for the first time since this flood mess started, community leaders were able to start the enormous task of damage assessment. The Merrimack River has engulfed about 1/4 of the homes in the city of Arnold. Of the city's 18,500 residents, the mayor says about 4,600 have suffered some damage. Businesses fared better. Only 4 have been hit by floodwaters. 95 homes were evacuated.
How you doing?
Fine, I guess.
In the unincorporated areas along the Merrimack, the director of Jefferson County's emergency management team started her assessment of all the damage.
We have 3 mobile home parks under. We were just heading up to Cool Valley Drive and Lavernal Drive. Both of them had to be evacuated last night. So there are several houses, several homes there. Of course, you can see behind us the pool is under. The damage is extensive in this area, and we don't know if we're finished yet.
Today's county assessment along the Merrimack revealed damage to 75 homes and at least 20 businesses. The Springdale Park and Pool has been totally swallowed up by the Merrimack River. Now, the Merrimack crested today, but despite the fact that it is now starting to recede, there is no way emergency management authorities can put a total dollar estimate on all the damage at this point, especially since they have other fears.
My greatest fear is that we'll have a second crest. So I'm urging people to keep their levees in place and shore them up, keep them up for a little bit longer until we see what's going to happen with the weather.
There were some success stories. In the Woodland subdivision, the water came close, but no one had any flood damage.
In a million years ever dreamed that we would get this high, ever. It's just been mind-boggling. We're all still in a state of shock.
Indeed, and there are many people still in a state of shock. Now, I'm going to show you some of the areas most affected in Arnold by this flood, some street closings and some subdivisions that have been affected greatly by this flood, starting with Starling Estates. They had an enormous amount of flood damage. They were hit hard. Lakeview Mobile Home Community, Starling Community Mobile Home Court, and Ozark Mobile Home Court streets A through D. Now, the main streets that are closed, Jesco Boulevard at the Merrimack River Bridge, Telegraph Road at the Merrimack River Bridge, Arnold Tenbrook Road, and the intersection of Hollywood Beach and Bradley Beach. Now, keep in mind, some of these homes in Arnold have been with 10 and 12 feet of water for 10 days now, and as soon as that water recedes even further, there's going to be an enormous amount of damage to go through, and carpeting and furniture and all those estimates. And Karen and Rick, I want to show you, it's almost as if it's like an old-time drive-in movie here, although there's no movie. What they're looking at is the receding Merrimack River. You can see the line of cars that have come just since our 5 o'clock shot earlier today, and they're just coming and watching it go away, and hopefully Mother Nature will be good to the people here in Arnold. Reporting live from Arnold, Lisa Zigman, News Channel 5.
They're all praying. Thanks, Lisa.
Well, you've seen 2 areas of damage now, but few places have suffered as much devastation as St. Charles County.
The northern section of St. Charles County is now a huge lake, and the crest does not mean that the problems there are over. News Channel 5's Jeff Fowler joins us from along the St. Charles riverfront with the impact of the crest there. Jeff?
Karen and Rick, we're here at the entrance to what is the Katy Trail State Park. Neither the trail nor the parking lot behind it are visible. They're still covered with water. The Missouri River into the St. Charles County crested last night, but officials say they are still concerned that the heavy rains over the weekend up north of here may bring a second crest through the St. Charles area sometime later this week. But already the figures here are mind-boggling. More than 10,000 people are estimated to have been displaced from their homes, and the size of this flood has done in the budgets of both St. Charles City and county. Even from the air, it is hard to comprehend, but it's now estimated that 43% of St. Charles County is now underwater. After levees began breaking over the weekend, many areas were doomed. This map will give you a good idea how extensive the flooding really is. All of the yellow area on this map is underwater. It runs from West Alton on the east to Old Monroe on the west, down to Highway 70 on the south. At the County Emergency Operations Center today, there were still calls coming in for help. Even as they posted the new river stages today, emergency officials are concerned the worst may not yet be over.
This will be a long-term effort, both in terms of response and recovery efforts continuing on for months.
People in the 280-unit Deerfield Village Mobile Home Park just left this weekend. They bring to about 10,000 the number of displaced people in St. Charles County. This park was built above the 100-year floodplain. County officials estimate they've already received $20 million in damage, and they've spent $725,000 just dealing with the flood. That's $125,000 more than was in the emergency account. County Executive Eugene Schwindeman says without federal help, the county is in financial trouble.
The county, I'm not sure of when we will get any money.
Well, Schwindeman estimates the damage already done at $20 million, as we said, but he knows that they won't see the real damage until after the water recedes. He said there's going to be problems with roads. There will be problems with insect control, with health problems. He says most people who have septic tanks will have to have those pumped out. All of those things will have to be dealt with after the water recedes, and officials admit that will be weeks or even into the middle of August before, in some places, the water gets down below flood stage in St. Charles County and in many other areas. And we should say, as in the city of St. Louis, we've seen a number of people coming along the riverfront here with their cameras tonight to take pictures. It has also become a tourist attraction here. And one other point we want to bring out, that much of the old part of St. Charles, many of the shops that tourists like to come to are not wet, they are not underwater, and are open. And some of the shop owners say they want people to know that. Reporting live from along the St. Charles riverfront, Jeff Fowler, News Channel 5.
All right, Jeff, thank you.
Long recovery there. And our neighbors across the Mississippi River in Illinois are still battling the river tonight. In Alton, the water has dropped about a half foot in the past 24 hours. No sandbaggers are working at this time, and levees there are holding. But city officials say downtown Alton will remain closed until at least Wednesday or Thursday. And in the Calhoun County community of Hardin, the town is pretty well isolated. Yesterday, the Nutwood levee collapsed, closing off the bridge that links Calhoun County with Jersey County and the St. Louis area. Now, Calhoun County residents must drive northeast for more than 2 hours before they can start heading back to the St. Louis area. Many supplies are being brought in by boat.
Well, upriver, Des Moines, Iowa is a dry desert in the midst of a huge flood.
As our Crest Special continues, we'll see how bad it is there today.
And for weeks, we've been talking about crest levels. Next, meet the people who come up with them and see how they do it. Stay with us.
This News Channel 5 Flood Watch 93 special is sponsored by Dodge Intrepid. At Dodge, we're...
When these areas begin rebuilding, these companies' gain could ultimately help boost the local economy.
Cover Story 5 tonight at 10 on News Channel 5, where the news comes first.
Gently rolling by.
I think part of the silence in people is the fact that there's something happening here that as individuals, we really can't do anything about it. But right now, we need each other.
Robin Smith, News 4, the mighty Mississippi.
And we'll be coming back with more of our live expanded coverage from the St. Louis riverfront after sports.
Exception of Hardin, Illinois, where they will crest tonight at about 39.5 feet. But throughout the two-state region, river levels, which had crested about a tenth higher than what they are today, are very, very slowly starting to fall. In Arnold, an amazing 42.9 feet. That's the flood stage down there. These numbers may be insignificant to some, but to residents in areas around the flooded rivers, they certainly do mean a lot. Now, we've been also telling you for the past day or two not to take the fact that the river has crested as a sign of very quick relief. As you can see, the forecasters out of the National Weather Service are forecasting the river to only very, very slowly fall over the next several days. Today, 46.8 feet. Tomorrow, 46.4 feet. And what that basically means is 0.4 of a foot, or about 5 inches or so lower tomorrow than today. And then again, a very slow fall after that, right on through the end of the week. And in St. Charles along the Missouri River, again, about a half a foot or about 6 inches it should drop by tomorrow. And then a very, very slow fall by about 6 inches a day over the next several days. At this point, it would appear that with normal rainfall amounts, the rivers will not get below flood stage till long about another 7 to 14 days at the least. And if we have any heavier rainfall upstream, it may be even a problem getting it that low at that point. Now, for weeks, we've been talking about the river crests and the river stages. People who don't even live along rivers now know what they are about. But who comes up with them and how? News Channel 5 meteorologist Scott Connell takes a look.
Trying to predict just how high the rivers would go has been a challenge facing forecasters since the deluge in the upper Mississippi Valley began last spring. Here at the National Weather Service Forecast Office in Weldon Spring, forecasters have been keeping a close eye on the rivers and keeping us informed. Among those putting in extra hours, hydrologist Jack Burns. Burns is responsible for all of Missouri's rivers. He gathers rainfall and river stage data early in the day so the calculating can begin at regional river forecast centers.
The flood crest is moving downstream, and we have levee breaches or overtopping in our levee breaks, and we lose water out into the side valleys. It takes water generally off of the front of that flood wave. What it does, how it changes that flood forecast, is it delays the forecast.
The forecasters at the National Weather Service say that even though the river has crested, it will be a while before the rivers return to where they ought to be during the summer months. Scott Connell, News Channel 5.
Thanks, Scott. Just to show you how precise the National Weather Service hydrologists are, they had predicted a crest of 47 feet. It turned out to be 46.9. That translates to them being off by about 1.5 inches. Now, as far as what lies ahead, of course, major concerns over the near and far future. And the latest National Weather Service 30-day forecast, thankfully, will show a change in the pattern. Below normal rainfall amounts expected to the east of us. Here in the St. Louis area, we should see over the next 30 days near normal rainfall amounts. Above normal rainfall amounts or wetter than normal conditions expected over the upper Midwest. But a footnote here, it is just going to be slightly above normal. At this point, knock on wood, keep your fingers crossed, over the next 30 days, we should not see the major areas of widespread deluging rains in Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and northwest Illinois. We'll keep our fingers crossed, hope it turns out, but at this time of the year, we start to get into a much drier pattern. I think we've kind of like gone over the hump, and things should look a little bit better over the next 30 days.
Overdue for a break, as you pointed out many times.
We can only hope. Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Bob. Well, the waters of the Mississippi would surely be swallowing more of St. Louis if it weren't for the Great Wall.
We'll take a look back at what is keeping this from being a whole lot worse. To normal until after May 26th. Yesteryear's pictures are much the same as today's pictures: flooded streets, rampaging waters, and volunteers doing what they can to help.
And the flood of 73 could have been worse, and the flood of 93 certainly would have been even more devastating if it were not for the Great Wall. In fact, in 1974, residents called a new flood wall the wall that saved St. Louis. For years, rail and industrial operations along the Mississippi River took a pounding in St. Louis. Scenes like this were common in the 1950s during spring and summer months. Army engineers, lawmakers, and business leaders drew up plans to reduce the damaging effects of Old Man River's fury. They proposed a flood wall for low-lying northern and central stretches of the riverfront. Congressman William Hungate and other lawmakers saw the need for federal funding of the wall. Original estimates put the cost of the 11-mile barrier at $130 million, but it was actually built for much less over a 15-year period.
This particular piece, the gap from the upper end around the Ashley Street Power Plant, will be about 2 years in the construction. It's a very difficult job, but with minor work during a flood, we could still isolate that and maintain the area right behind here in a dry condition.
Army engineers and city officials were proud of the wall and its series of floodgates for crucial roads. Most of the wall was intact when the record-setting flood of 1973 hit, and the north side of the city escaped serious damage. By the time the wall was dedicated in 1974, it had paid for itself several times over by sparing St. Louis from damage. And wouldn't you know it, the dedication ceremony had to be moved indoors at the Gateway Arch because of heavy rains on May 21st, 1974. The St. Louis flood wall ended up costing only $85 million, or $45 million less than they had figured. And this week, I think a lot of people would agree that that was cheap, even at $85 million.
Great foresight there. Well, no matter how bad it is, you can help keep it from getting
At
worse.
Dodge, we're changing everything.
Whether it's boom or bust.
Our extended Flood Watch 93 coverage begins tonight at 10 after Mad About You. Well, you can help the